Well, let's turn our attention back to what's happening with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. All sorts of dreadful things have been happening. People have been traumatized, and you might be surprised as to what sort of work Christians are involved in as they support people who are suffering the trauma of war in Ukraine and perhaps even what's happening on the other side of the border in Russia. Back today with Rudy Weins. Rudy is a veteran minister overseeing FEBC Eurasia. It is one of the world's big Christian broadcasters, FEBC, broadcasting all around the world, but a focus today on what's happening in the Russian and Ukrainian contexts. Rudy Weins, a special welcome back to 2020.
Well, thank you.
Rudy, if there's a silver lining to a very dark cloud, it's that FEBC hasn't been taking shelter while the war has been going on. You've actually got new broadcast operations at work in Ukraine.
Well, as Christians, I think we have to be on a cutting edge, and so on, and not run away, but rather meet the challenges and so on. Our Ukrainian staff really does a tremendous job. One of our first studios in broadcasting was in Slavyansk, and the name of that city in the eastern part of Ukraine, you hear in the news, so that's right now being bombed as we talked. Well, I don't know, exactly how far they are, with that, but there used to be war in 2014 already. Slavyansk was bombed and so on. But that then was under Kiev rule for the last years, and now it's again, under charge. And so our national director, and we use everywhere nationals, national director for FEBC Ukraine, is from Slavyansk. He's now in Chernovtsi, in the western part of the country, because he had to take the family. So most people have gotten out of that city. And so and then they broadcast there, and many still they left. Even there was a time when they left Kiev, our main studio, our center, but now many of them are back in Kiev, and we broadcast there. We actually got a frequency, an FM frequency now. We hope to start soon, broadcasting 24/7 there in the capital of Ukraine.
When you have missiles flying overhead or even missiles landing on neighbouring premises, neighbouring businesses, we've seen the images of what's been happening in Ukraine with the Russian invasion. How have your staff in Ukraine, who are staffing Christian radio, how have they coped with all of the challenges that have come with being under attack?
Well, to my knowledge, up to these days, they are all alive, our co-workers. Even so, we lost a few people in 2014 to that first war, there. So, and they were basically two people, they were tortured to death, and they were not full-time with us, but they participated in the ministry and were on the radio quite regularly. That was a very sad story. And we hope there will be not too many more, in that sense. But we are not excluding that. And so our people, they are very, it's very real to them that close people, close friends, relatives, and so on, they could perish, So that's very real to them. And of course, when you are standing before, in the face of death, so your trust in the Lord has a different degree, kind of different level, a much deeper level. So so we're praying for them, of course, and so they are, and not only the Ukrainian side, but the Russian side also, So some of the soldiers, they come from Christian families and so on. Of course, we counsel them to oppose these and not to participate in it, to opt out ahead of time even, so it might be dangerous. Some might end up in prison for it, but it's better than to get to be a part of such a evil war,
Your staff obviously are good people with hearts to serve God, because my suspicion is that they're not under any coercion to stay in a battlefield area and continue these broadcasts. They obviously have some sort of option where they might want to leave and find their own safety, but they're staying because they see that as something of a mission that they have from their own calling before God.
That's right. So a number of our people, that they were they said, I don't have to sacrifice my family, so they send their wife or husbands or the kids, more towards the west, Poland, Germany, or Western Europe somewhere, or even in some places they send them to Russia, so that's also a safer place, in the midst of the war, so in that sense, it's sometimes challenging, of course, but for kids and for mothers, it's better than to be running daily into a bomb shelter,
Rudy, you're overseeing the operations on both sides of the border, the Russian side and also the Ukrainian side. Have we got any idea how many people in Ukraine or indeed in Russia actually listening in to the FEBC broadcasts?
Well, I think many more than before the war started. So that's a good sign. That's a positive outcome of these. But we wish it would be different, of course, So, but in times of need, so in Russian we even sing a song, as darker the night is, as brighter the stars shine, So for that reason, obviously people, when it's really challenging, life challenging, so people think about God, about eternity, about spiritual things, So for that reason, it's an opportunity for us also to share the good news, eternal news,
And you've got a broad reach across Ukraine and your broad reach across Russia, and these are vast territories. The number of people listening might give us some sort of indication because, as I understand it, you've got hundreds of people who are coming to Christ because of the broadcasts.
That's right. So it's amazing. So we just about a year ago we started a counseling kind of follow-up, and so like in Ukraine alone, so at this time we have about 170 churches where we did seminars with people who counsel, our listeners, because there are couple millions probably that listen regularly to us, so they call in. We don't have the staff, that can do it all, so we set up counseling centers in about 170 churches throughout Ukraine, and so on. They do the follow-up and talk with people and so on. So that's a kind of a new project that we did, and very successfully, to follow up with listeners.
So the radio becomes a catchment. People are listening in, and whether they're safe or whether they're in danger, the listenership has been growing. As you say, millions listening to FEBC, hundreds coming to Christ, and I should have said hundreds coming to Christ every day every week, those sorts of numbers. And then you've got a network, hundreds of churches who are doing the follow-up to be able to reap a harvest in that sense of what's coming in a very, very hard time for the people.
And of course, like in the counseling, especially in the time of war, it's very challenging as well. So they need some training, and so we're doing the training seminars in churches as well, with people who would be open to participate in the outreach to listeners, to people who are in real need. Of course, we give some information also, but that's some other government entities, they do that as well. So like where there's a way for refugees or the getting out of the war zone or what have you, those kind of information. Obviously, people are needing that, or where to get water, in that sense. So we participate in that, but that's not our prime goal, because government, media, and we participate when necessary, in those humanitarian kind of information, passing on information.
I spoke to you once before about where you sit as a Christian broadcaster, because you're on both sides of the border. You're on the Russian side for the Russians, and you're on the Ukrainian side for the Ukrainians, and you take a place in that conflict which says we're Christians, we're not taking sides, we're peacemakers. For people to respond to you, clearly the language matters, and as I understand it, you've got broadcast in the heart languages of people. It's not just Russian. No doubt there's a whole lot of dialects in the Russian territory, and there's no doubt a whole lot of dialects in the Ukrainian territory. How do you cover all of those language groups?
Well, one of our motto is nationals to nationals, of course, and so on. For example, in Central Asia, there are so many stands, and most of those people groups, they are traditionally Muslims, and so on. So there's lots of differences there, from the Orthodox kind of culture. And so we say, for example, in Kyrgyzstan now, we have a network of FM stations, and we broadcast in Kyrgyz language, but also like our national director there, he knows lots of Uzbek people, Turkmens people, Tajik people, and so basically he's then trying to help to reach out and record, and we use a lot of social media now. So, and that's where it's easier. So even without having any radio stations, so we can already reach out in those languages as well. So we wish we would do much more already, but then it depends always on the people available locally, who know the language and whose heart is on the right side, So as I always say, so that's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. So we're working on it, and more and more languages start to participate.
And the growth of FEBC over all these years, and starting with those radio broadcasts, as you say, there's a whole new world in social media these days. So you've got FEBC staff who are working with all sorts of different platforms with social media. So TikTok, and you're not restricted even to locations, even from the bomb shelters, as the bombs the missiles are flying overhead. You've got people who are actually able to commentate and to bring encouragement and to bring a faith message to the people.
And especially on social media, especially when you talk about those, like TikTok you mentioned, so I mean, most of those people that are on TikTok, they are not very serious, deep, religious or philosophically minded people, but those are people who need the Lord, and we're reaching out to them. So social media gives us a new platform. There's lots of junk on it, if you will. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but we want to be there. We want to be the light and salt, and share the good news. And people who accept Jesus is the answer actually for everything, including death.
Rudy, for the Aussies listening to our conversation today, is there a way that Australians can participate in a wonderful mission that you're involved in with FEBC and broadcasting both sides? You've got the Ukrainian operation, you've got the Russian operation. For Aussies to support FEBC, how do they do that?
Well, Australia has been a part of our ministry for many, many years, almost from the beginning. As a matter of fact, when I was on Saipan and doing shortwave broadcast, I received a weekly broadcast from Sydney, from a Russian pastor, who did record sermons, and we used to put it on our schedule, So Australian people have been participating in broadcasts, but also supporting many projects. Like we had 3 or 4 times a group of men coming from Australia to Almaty, Kazakhstan, and helping us just doing the studio and the office, the office building. And you should have seen those Kazakh people, they're nomadic people, so not as organized as Australians, obviously. But the work ethic, that the Australians showed, that was amazing, So people years later, they talk about that. Oh, you remember those Australian guys, Graham and others, who came and went up the tree, with a chainsaw, and already up in age, So that was unheard of, So I think that Australia has done a lot, and of course is continuing to do. So we really appreciate FEBC Australia, that are a major partner in reaching out, not only in Southeast Asia, in Far East, but also in Central Asia and in Eurasia, Russia, Ukraine.
So Aussies have been a part of the work of FEBC, reaching out to the Russians and those Eastern European nations for many, many years, rolling up their sleeves, a great reputation for supporting the good work of FEBC. No doubt there'll be listeners today who might like to support some more, becoming a prayer partner, connecting with FEBC, even making a financial contribution, a donation, at a time when things no doubt are very tough with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let me give the website for connecting to FEBC. It's febc.org.au. FEB stands for Far East Broadcasting Company. These days, just a short form, febc.org.au. Rudy Weins, a veteran minister who oversees FEBC Eurasia. Rudy, thank you so much for sharing your heart with us once again today on 2020.
Thank you for having me.